updating it.
Nothing changes faster than the weather, but we're running a close second. Stay informed with Weather Center all day today and every day.
In the next half hour, Weather Center AM, a comprehensive national forecast. At 40 after, Weather Center AM continues with highway and air travel conditions. Then the weekend outlook. And at 50 after, Storm Watch. But right now, it's your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
You're looking at a live picture of a snowy Syracuse, New York, where an early spring storm could bring 6 to 8 inches of snow into the area. And snow is the big story today in the Northeast, while cooler temperatures are making things a bit nippy in the Southeast, the Plains, and the Ohio Valley. Good morning, everyone. I'm Bruce Edwards, and welcome to Weather Center.
And I'm Cheryl Lemke. Thanks for joining us. Now, warm clothing will be essential again today in the Northeast as the storm continues to produce a variety of wintry precipitation. And certainly temperatures are nippy throughout the Northeast, mainly 20s and 30s. And those cold temperatures are certainly cold enough to support some ice and some snow. We're watching a low-pressure system that's tracking its way through the Northeast. And this morning, yes, there's been some icing. Some sleet and some rain coming down around the New York City metro area. Mainly some snow, though, across the eastern lakes, some of which have been very heavy for Watertown and Rochester, New York, and more snows tailing southward towards the Ohio Valley. Well, snowfall totals could eventually add up to 6 to 8 inches in Syracuse, New York. And that's where the Weather Channel's Kristen Dodd is tracking the storm. Good morning, Kristen. What's the latest?
Well, Cheryl, we're seeing a little bit of a change here in the snowfall. Earlier, we had it coming down very heavy, and it was about the size of a nickel to sometimes even a quarter. Now we're getting a little bit warmer temperatures, and so we have a little bit of sleet mixed into the snow, but it is still coming down very heavily. Here on the ground, we have now, about 1.5 inches to 2 inches having piled up, but it's compacting as it's hitting the ground because it is so heavy. So we're not really getting a very accurate measurement as far as the depth and exactly what has fallen. We have had an official report of over 2 inches in Buffalo, which is to our east. Behind me is Interstate 81, which leads to Syracuse, and we are seeing some problems on this roadway. We had a gentleman come from the local Ground Round restaurant to drop off some sandwiches for us, and he was telling us that 81 is pretty good right now, but it's the secondary roads in this area that the plows have not been able to reach that are still very slick and had some problems. We've seen some accidents here, and that snow is expected to continue through the afternoon hours, and so the problems on the roads will also continue. Right now we are seeing a temperature of about 33 degrees. The wind has not been a big problem, so our wind chill is not a big factor here, and we don't expect it to be until tomorrow when the winds will gradually begin to pick up as the storm system moves away. Cheryl, back to you.
Thanks, Kristen. Well, Kristen was showing us a very snowy Syracuse, and Syracuse will be one of many cities across the Northeast that will see a lot of snow coming down today. Actually, we think some of the heavier snows will be falling from the eastern lakes, the eastern Finger Lakes, and then streaming over towards the mid-Hudson Valley. And there are some winter storm warnings in effect for today. Now, around New York City, though, you had a cold rain this morning, a little sleet mixing in. Most of that now is pushed to your north. We're still watching some rains, though, gliding across Long Island, especially around Orient Point and Montauk Point, and now the ice developing around Hartford and Bridgeport, Connecticut, so some treacherous traveling there. Meanwhile, some snow, though, for those of you in Boston. You'll still be picking up more snow, a little cold rain, some sleet continuing throughout the afternoon, so factor that into your plans if you're planning on maybe heading out to the grocery stores or the shopping malls a little bit later today. Meanwhile, again, the snow from Buffalo on into Erie and Bradford, PA, and more snows too curling back through the Ohio Valley. Well, again, a very wintry scenario, which is rather ironic because today marks the first full day of spring, but it certainly doesn't feel like it. Right now, the snowflakes are flying around Cleveland and Detroit and Toledo, and you're picking up some snow too around Indianapolis this morning, and the snow running southward towards Lexington and Louisville. Actually, we have snow as far south as Rome, Georgia this morning. The biggest headaches, though, today will be across the Northeast. Still threats of locally heavy rain and flash flood watches have been posted. Little wintry icy mixture for southern New England, and then lots of snow, though, across interior sections. And by day's end, well, you might be shoveling out from 6 to 12 inches of snow from the eastern Finger Lakes through the mid-Hudson Valley, including those of you around Albany, Troy, and Rensselaer. The good news, though, with all this is that the kids have to be loving it. Great conditions for making the snowmen and the snow forts today, and the ski slopes, too, will benefit. There'll be lots of fresh powder for Attitash, Jay Peak, and Smuggler's Notch throughout the day. Bruce?
Well, a sweater or something heavier might help you feel a little more comfortable today in the southeast as well as the plains in the Ohio Valley as cooler temperatures are rolling into the region this morning. And again, it is very unspring-like. Of course, today is the first full day of spring. Spring officially arrived. It got here yesterday afternoon, 2:55 Eastern Time. And as you look at yesterday's high temperatures, how they compare to normal, not looking good here in the south central states. They were well below normal for this time of the year. Warmer than normal, though, in the west. So you can tell ridge, trough, a little bit of a ridge here, and that's how we had in the overall pattern. Well, now what we're seeing is here's your ridge, here's your trough in your area of low pressure. That's funneling in cold northerly winds, and temperatures are much colder today than they were at the same time yesterday, especially in the southeast and mid-Atlantic. It's 8 degrees colder in Miami, 9 degrees colder right now in Tampa, 16 degrees colder in Atlanta, Georgia, 10 degrees colder in Nashville, Tennessee. All the negative numbers here, meaning it's really getting nippy. 37 in Atlanta right now, and here we are at 10:35 in the morning. Very chilly indeed. 38 in Birmingham, 48 in New Orleans, even 61 in Orlando is not so good because winds are pretty brisk. Wind chill value in Atlanta feels like 16, like 33 a little.
Nothing changes faster than the weather, but we're running a close second. Stay informed with Weather Center all day today and every day.
In the next half hour, Weather Center, a comprehensive national forecast. At 40 after, Weather Center continues with highway and air travel conditions. Then the weekend outlook. And at 50 after, Storm Watch. But right now, it's your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
afternoon. I'm Kristen Dodd, live in Syracuse, New York, where the snow has been coming down all morning. We do have some accidents on the roadways and plenty of problems here. I'll have a live report coming up in just a moment. Now back to Cheryl and Bruce in the studio with the current weather picture.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Well, snow is indeed the big story today in the Northeast. And while cooler temperatures are making things a bit uncomfortable in the Southeast, the Plains, and the Ohio Valley. Good morning, everyone. I'm Bruce Edwards.
And good morning. I'm Cheryl Lemke. Thanks for joining us. Well, warm clothing will be essential again today in the Northeast as the storm produces a variety of wintry precipitation. And our latest weather map showing us that it is quite chilly throughout the Northeast, with 20s and 30s and lower 40s very common. So I'm sure the winter coats and the parkas will be a common sight from Beantown all the way back towards the nation's capital. We're watching a storm system spinning through the Northeast, and boy, has it caused a mess this morning. We've had locally heavy rains in some locales, like in Pennsylvania, where there's still some localized flooding, but we've also had some icing problems and then locally heavy